Hello there, I'm going to show you how to make this lovely table runner. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I have over 500 videos on sewing and quilting. Please leave a comment, it helps with the algorithm on my channel when you do that. And don't forget to like. In the description box down below, you'll find the information on where to find all the cutting instructions for this table runner. You'll be taking one section D and two C sections, and you will be sewing them to the right and left hand side of your fabrics. Now, if you are using a pattern, you're going to place them right sides together. So this would be pattern facing up and pattern facing down. So they're both right sides together, and you are going to sew 1/4 inch. And make sure that your sewing machine is truly sewing 1/4 inch, because it will make a difference. So just get a piece of scrap fabric, sew a line down, and then take your ruler and measure it. If you go back to my coaster video, I show you exactly how to do that. I am not paid nor sponsored during any part of this tutorial. In my top thread, I have a regular polyester white, and in my bobbin thread, I have some bobbin thread in there. And my needle is a 9014 sewing needle. And on the Baby Lock Soprano, there is some selections you can make if you are piecing. So the stitches that have a P next to them, which are stitches 30, 29 and 31. 30 is if you have a 1/4 inch foot with guide, and it does the 1/4 inch from the center of the foot. The 29 and the 31 will either do the 1/4 inch from the right hand side of the regular foot or the left hand side of the regular foot. I'm going to take my first section, I'm going to sew that into place. And then taking that second section, I'm going to sew that to the other side. You're going to start getting these tails here, so you're going to cut these off as you go along. And then you're going to open them up. You're going to press and then press that side down. Then you're going to take it over to the iron. Now when you iron, you're not actually ironing, you're pressing. Just press your iron up and down. You don't want to warp the fabric, you don't want to stretch the fabric, because that's going to interfere with our seams. So be careful when you are pressing. Now you're going to take 2 A units and 1 C unit, and these are going to be sewn together like this. So you're going to sew this one down here and this one down here. Once again, you will cut away these tails. You will open and just do a nice press here at each side. Take it over to your iron and press. Now if you look at the diagram that I did, you're going to need 2 of these units. So I'm going to do a second one. So this was the first unit we did, and these are the 2 second units that we just finished. Taking the first unit, you are going to place one on top of the other. Now, it's really important that you nest these seams. If you find it easier to go back and press this other seam one way and have this seam going another way, and you can truly find that center, then do that. Whatever makes it easy for you, and then you do it. And then you're going to make sure that this other side matches. So we are matching these 2 seams, and they're going to match perfectly together. Now once you get that done, you can pin or you can wonder clip, it's totally up to you, and you're going to sew it into place. And here we go. You always match the seams and not the end of the fabric, because if you haven't been 100% at cutting, then you're going to be off on these seams. So you're going to do the same thing with the other side of this. So you're going to go ahead, find your seams, and then you're going to sew into place. Then open the units up and take over to your iron and press. Now do you see here I was a little bit off, so it's really important to match them seams. The other side was perfect, just this side. If it bothers you, you can unpick, totally up to you. I'm going to continue on. You're going to take 2 B units and these are going to go either side of the block. If it is slightly too long, just trim it next to the block where you see the overhang. I'm not surprised, I was watching TV while I was doing this. I was watching Fixer Upper, the hotel edition, it was very good. So open this out and press. Next you will need 2 A's and a B. So again, these will go right sides together and you'll sew them into place. We will need to sew exactly the same unit for the other side. Cut the threads, press the units, and once again match the seams and not the ends of the unit. So make sure you match your seams. You're going to take 2 F units and you're going to sew them either side of this bigger unit. So anytime we do a block, it needs to be perfectly straight. So have you seen how this has gone off a little bit? It could have just stretched because it might have been done on the bias. So what we're going to do is just cut straight across here and make this a straight block again. We don't want to see, so this is perfect. It goes straight across. Oh no, actually it isn't. There's a little bit here. So you're going to make these straight to the block. We're going to take an F and 2 E units and sew them together. And you're going to do a second unit. Next thing you're going to do is take a G unit and 2 E's and sew them together. Do the same thing for the other side. Then you will sew it to the top and the bottom of this unit. This block basically repeats another 3 times. If you're confident enough to continue on with just looking at a diagram, do that. And also in the description box down below, I have timestamps, and that moves you forward quicker than you having to rewind it. So have a look at the timestamps to see the next part when I start doing the borders. First of all, taking your D section and 2 C's, you are going to sew the 2 C's right sides together to the 2 D's. Now taking an A, you're going to sew that to one of the sides of C and do the same with the other side. While I did this one, I did the other side of the unit, and like before, we're going to match the seams. Always match the seams, not the end of the unit. Nest them and sew into place, both the top side and the bottom. Remember to keep checking that your block is straight. And on this side, there's a little bit of an overhang, so I'm going to chop that off. Take 2 B sections, sew to each side. Continue to evaluate your block. I have more overhang, so I'm going to cut that off. Sew together 2 more units. And sew the block to the top and bottom of the unit. Take an F section and sew to the right and left of each block. Cut any of the excess you may have. Now this was our first block, and we don't need to do this bit for the top and the bottom here because it's already added to the bottom of this section here. So we just want to sew it down the bottom here. So taking a G and 2 E's, you're going to sew them together. Now sew this to the bottom of your block. If you want to, you can sew your top unit up with your second unit. Now you will simply repeat the process for the next 2 blocks. We are now going to attach the borders, and this is H and it goes left and right. You're going to put a border at the bottom and a border at the top, and this one is section I. If you have any excess, trim it off. If you don't, then great. I'm going to take my J sections and I'm going to sew them to either end of the table runner. There is going to be excess and you're going to take that off. And then K will be sewn next to the long sides. So this is what we should have, and let's get the quilt sandwich sorted. You're going to lay down your backing fabric first. I would highly recommend that you start to purchase some extra wide backing. This extra wide backing is around about 108 inches width. So now you're not having to mess about with joining two regular sized cotton together. This is just so much easier because you've got the width already. On top of the backing piece, you're going to lay your batting. This gives some stabilization. Don't skimp on this. It's really important to use batting. And then I'm going to place my quilt top on top of that. As you will see, I have an excess all the way around this, and you really do have to have excess, at least 2 inches all the way around, because we're going to start quilting from the center of this table runner, and then we're going to quilt out. And as we do that, we are pushing the fabric like down, and what will happen is sometimes if you cut it like too accurate with everything right now, then you may end up with no backing and no batting. So always do the excess. If you flip it over, you should be able to see the back of your backing piece. I am going to change my foot to my walking foot and do some simple straight line stitching. I've got my walking foot on. That also comes with this guide here. If I match it up with a seam, it'll help me create some straight lines. My feed dogs are left up, and I'm just going to do some straight line stitching. This is one of the best ways of doing some quilting if you're not quite confident yet. So don't let yourself get caught up in any of them like quilting rules just yet. I just want you to have some fun with the quilting before we start getting like really strict with things. You'll know what I mean if you continue on doing this hobby. There's certain ways that you have to do quilting if you want to enter an award show, but you know, this is a table topper. It's a table runner. I'm not entering it in a show. I just want it to look pretty and nice. I'll show you what the reverse side looks like. This is really cool because it really hides all the stitches, so you can't see anything that stands out so well. I think this is a grunge. I think this might be Moda grunge backing fabric, just in case you want to know. And I'm just going to cut away all these excess threads. The next thing we want to do is cut away the excess of our batting and backing fabrics. Just going to go along and just going to cut away right close to the top. You will have 4 strips of fabric that you need to join up for the binding. You can have one going across and one going up and down. And then you're going to mark a diagonal line going from one corner to the other corner, and you're going to stitch it into place. I will generally get a friction pen or something and just draw that line. When you open it up, it'll be sewn on the bias, so continue along attaching them. Double check that all your seams are on the same side, and then once you've done that check, you can turn it around and cut off the excess. The next thing you're going to do is fold this over in half, and you're folding over the seam, and you're going to do that from one end all the way to the other. You're going to have about 8 inches of overhang. You're going to do it from the raw edge and match the raw edges to a longer raw edge. So I'm going to be about here. So I'm going to start sewing here, and I'm going to go to the right, and I'll stop before I get to the end. You will sew all the way to the end of your table runner. Then you're going to lift this part up here, do a nice finger press there, and fold it back down on itself. Now, when you go to sew this, you don't want to ride over this fold. So you want to come just underneath this fold and start sewing. Once again, I sewed all the way to the end. Then I'm going to lift it up, pull it back down, and I'm just going to start sewing again just underneath this fold. It's a little bit too far up that. There we go. Once again, I sewed all the way to the end. I'm going to lift this up and I'm going to fold this back. This is the last corner, so I'm going to bring that up and fold it back down. Now I'm not going to sew all the way to the other side. I am going to stop a little bit. I sewed about 14 inches on that left side. Now what we're going to do is find the middle of our table runner by folding it in half and then putting a grip there. So the right hand side of the fabric is okay. I don't need to cut anything off. Now what we're going to do, once again, not paid nor sponsored to create this video, but I highly recommend that you get this binding tool. So I do 2.5 inch binding. So I am going to line up this right hand section of this binding to the end of the binding, and I am going to take the left hand side of my binding and I'm going to fold it over to that 2.5 inch mark. And then I'm going to take a pair of scissors, and where that is folded over, I'm going to cut it. What you'll do next is take your left hand side piece of fabric and have that going up, and then where this crease is, we're going to call it the right side of the fabric. And then you're going to take the right hand side of the fabric with that right side, and now it's best to just fold this over as it comes in, because it's nice and easier to work with. You need one piece of fabric going across and the other going up and down. So the left hand side of the fabric is going up and down, and the right hand side of the fabric is going from left to right. Now take some clips and clip that together. You're going to turn that section so you've got that point going up like that, because we now want to get a diagonal line going across, because we want to make that nice binding strip. Taking the ruler, now you're going to look at this big bold line and you're going to put it next to this section here. So you're going to have to take your clips out and just make sure that you have your pen handy. So you're going to take your clips out. You're going to have that diagonal going across, which should allow you now to draw a line going across, and that should be meeting the two corners. Take it to your sewing machine and stitch, and then once you flip it out, everything is absolutely perfect. So it's not too tight, not too slack, it's absolutely perfect. So now you're going to cut away the excess here. Now you're going to take this back to your sewing machine and you're going to stitch this back into place. Now what I like to do is get my wonder clips and start folding the binding behind. If when you fold your corners over, they're not mitering properly, it's just that you haven't gone far enough up. Do you know that time when I said you sew all the way to the bottom, and then when you fold it over, you don't quite go all the way from the top because you don't want to interfere with the fold right at the corner here. So if you just take it back to the sewing machine and sew a little bit further up, then it should sew that mitre correctly. Now I like to hand stitch, so I'm going to go off and hand stitch this in front of the TV. That's how I like to do all of my binding, just sat in front of the TV, chilling out with a coffee and a cat. Okay, so this is the finished table runner. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. Don't forget to subscribe. I have over 500 sewing and quilting tutorials. Comment down below, that really helps the algorithm and my channel when you do that. And don't forget to like.